everyone, welcome to Humaning. I'm Zoe and I am so happy you're tuning in today. If you're new here, this is the podcast where we dig into all things human. What makes us tick, what excites us, what connects us. And today we're diving into something super close to my heart. Why you must travel solo at least once in your life. We'll be unpacking stories, lessons, and maybe a few surprises too. And as always, I'm joined by my wonderful friend and co-host, Amir. Hi, Amir.
Hey, Zoe. And hi to everyone listening. I'm really excited about today's topic. I think solo travel is one of those things that can sound a bit intimidating at first, but it's honestly life-changing. There's so much to unpack: the freedom, the growth, the unexpected joys. But before we really get going, can I just say, if you're enjoying these conversations, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, maybe even share it with a friend who needs a little inspiration. It genuinely helps us keep these conversations going, and we love having you all as part of the Humaning community.
Yes. Thank you for reminding me, Amir. We seriously love seeing our little podcast family grow, so your support means the world. All right, let's get into it. Amir, when I say solo travel, what's the first thing that pops into your mind?
Honestly, I think of landing in a new city, maybe a little jet-lagged, and realizing, wow, it's just me. There's this surge of both excitement and, if I'm being honest, a little fear. But it's that mix that makes solo travel so powerful. I remember my first solo trip. I went to Istanbul for a week, and I'll never forget just wandering those winding streets, not quite sure where I was going, but feeling completely alive. What about you, Zoe? When did you first travel on your own?
Oh, I love that image. Just you in the city, figuring it out moment by moment. My first solo trip was to Lisbon. I'd just gone through a breakup, and honestly, I just needed to get away and find myself again. I booked a last-minute ticket, packed a tiny backpack, and just went. I was terrified but also weirdly excited, and that week in Lisbon ended up being one of the most transformative weeks of my life. I realized how capable I was, navigating new places, eating alone in restaurants, making friends with total strangers. It was like meeting myself for the first time.
That's beautiful. I think that's something people don't always expect. How much solo travel teaches you about yourself. There's this historical thread, too. If you look back, so many cultures have rites of passage that involve some sort of journey or pilgrimage alone. It's like stepping away from what's familiar is part of how we grow.
Absolutely. It's like the modern day hero's journey, right? You leave your comfort zone, you face challenges, you discover new parts of yourself, and you come home changed. But instead of fighting dragons, you're just figuring out the metro system in a foreign language or finding your way back to your hostel at 2 a.m.
Sometimes that does feel like fighting a dragon, though, especially when you're tired or lost. But I think that's part of it. The challenges make you resourceful. I remember this one night in Morocco. I took the wrong bus and ended up in a completely unfamiliar part of the city. My phone was dead, and for a minute I just sat down on a curb and thought, okay, this is it. I'm stuck. But then I started asking people for directions, and this older gentleman ended up walking with me all the way to my guest house, just chatting about his life. That kindness, that connection. It wouldn't have happened if I was with a big group.
That's so true. And that's something I want to talk about. The way solo travel opens you up to meeting new people. Because when you're on your own, you're so much more approachable. I remember sitting in a little cafe in Lisbon, just journaling, and this woman next to me started chatting about the pastries. We ended up spending the whole afternoon together, exploring the city, sharing stories. If I'd been with friends, I don't think that would have happened.
Right, it's like you're more present, more open to serendipity. There's actually research on this. When you're alone, you're more likely to engage with strangers, to try new things, to step out of your comfort zone. It's almost like you become a different version of yourself, maybe braver, maybe more curious.
I love that. And it's not just about meeting people, but also about being comfortable with your own company. I think that's huge. So many of us are used to constant noise, friends, family, social media. But when you travel solo, it's just you and your thoughts. and at first it can feel uncomfortable, but then it becomes kind of magical. Did you ever feel that, Amir?
Oh, absolutely. I remember my first meal alone in Istanbul. I was so self-conscious, like everyone was watching me. But then I realized nobody cared. People are living their lives. Eventually, I started to enjoy it, taking my time, really tasting the food, watching people go by. There's a sort of quiet confidence that comes from being okay with your own company.
Yes. And I think solo travel is such a gentle way to build that confidence. It's like step by step. You prove to yourself that you can handle challenges, you can enjoy your own company, you can make friends wherever you go, and that feeling stays with you, even when you come home.
It really does. It changes your relationship with the world, but also with yourself. I think a lot of people worry about being lonely when they travel alone, but honestly, I found that I feel lonelier in a group where I don't really connect than I do wandering by myself in a new city.
That's so true. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely. And sometimes solo travel helps you appreciate solitude in a new way. Like, I cherish those mornings where I can just wander a city with no plan, just following my curiosity. It's something I try to bring into my life at home now, too.
I love that. I think solo travel also forces you to be more mindful. You notice the little things, the way the light hits a building, the sounds of the street, the taste of a new dish. There's no one to distract you, so you're fully there.
I totally agree. And it's funny because you'd think being alone would make you feel disconnected, but I found the opposite. I actually feel more connected to the world, to people, to the moment.
That's such a good point. And I think we should talk about the practical side too. Like, what would you say to someone who's listening and thinking, okay, this sounds nice, but I'm scared to travel alone? What if things go wrong?
Oh, I get that. I was so nervous before my first solo trip. But here's the thing, things might go wrong. You might get lost, or miss a train, or have an awkward meal alone. But those moments are where the magic happens. They teach you resilience, and you end up with the best stories. My advice would be start small. Maybe do a solo weekend trip somewhere close to home. Build up your confidence.
That's great advice. And I'd add, do your research, trust your gut, and remember that most people are kind and willing to help. I always try to learn a few basic phrases in the local language, and I keep important numbers written down just in case. But honestly, most of the scary scenarios are just in our heads.
Totally. And there are so many resources now apps, forums, travel blogs. You're never really alone. I also like to check in regularly with friends or family, just so someone knows where I am. It helps me feel safer.
Same here. And as a man, I know I have a certain privilege when it comes to safety. But I've spoken to so many women travelers who've had incredible solo experiences. I think it's important to acknowledge the risks, but also not let fear stop you from having these transformative adventures.
Absolutely. And for anyone listening who's worried about safety, there are fantastic communities online, like solo female traveler groups, where you can get advice, share experiences, and support each other. I've met some of my closest friends that way.
Community is so important, even when you're traveling alone. And I think that's something people sometimes misunderstand about solo travel. They think it means being isolated, but actually, it can lead to deeper connections, both with others and with yourself.
Yes. And I always come back from solo trips feeling so much more in tune with myself, but also with a sense of gratitude for all the kindness I've experienced along the way. Like, I'll never forget the time I got hopelessly lost in Sintra, and this elderly couple literally walked me half a mile back to my hostel, chatting in Portuguese the whole way, even though I barely understood a word. It's those moments that stick with you.
That's such a wonderful story. And it's those moments of vulnerability, being lost, needing help, that remind us we're all human. I think solo travel humbles you in the best way.
It really does. And I think it helps you shed some of those layers of who you should be. When you're in a new place, no one knows you. You can be whoever you want. It's freeing.
That's such a good point. There's a kind of liberation in anonymity, isn't there? You can reinvent yourself, even if it's just for a few days. I remember in Morocco, I found myself joining a group of musicians in a park, just listening and clapping along. I never would have done that back home, but something about being in a new place, on my own, gave me permission to just be.
I love that so much, and I think the lessons you learn through solo travel spill over into the rest of your life. You realize you're capable of more than you thought. You become more adaptable, more curious, more open. It's honestly one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself.
Couldn't agree more. I think if you're listening and you've been on the fence about taking that solo trip, let this be your sign. It doesn't have to be halfway around the world. It could be a road trip to a new town, a weekend retreat, anything that lets you step out of your routine and into the unknown.
You know, Amir, something you mentioned earlier really stuck with me, the idea of rites of passage. I think solo travel becomes that for a lot of modern people, especially for those of us who don't have those kinds of rituals built into our cultures anymore. It's like we have to create our own initiations into adulthood or new phases of life.
That's so true, Zoe. I mean, if you think about it, there's something inherently transformative about stepping away from everything that's familiar. Even if it's just for a week, when you're out there on your own, you're forced to rely on yourself in ways you might not at home. And when you come back, you're never quite the same. Have you ever felt like you came home and people didn't quite get how much you'd changed?
Oh my gosh, yes. After Lisbon, I remember coming home and feeling like I'd seen this whole new side of the world and also of myself, and I just wanted to tell everyone about it. But it's hard to put into words, isn't it? You have these little moments, like I can still remember the taste of that first pastel de nata I ate on a park bench, or the way the tiles glimmered in the afternoon sun. Those moments changed me, but they're so personal, so internal.
Yes, exactly. Some of the most profound moments are the quietest ones, the ones you experience just for yourself. And solo travel gives you permission to be fully present for those moments. No distractions, no compromises. It's just you and the world.
And you realize just how big and beautiful the world is. I think solo travel expands your sense of possibility. Like, if I can figure out a subway system in a language I don't speak, or make friends halfway across the world, what else am I capable of?
Absolutely, it's empowering. I think it also builds empathy, you know? When you're the outsider, when you're the one asking for help or trying to understand a new culture, you become more sensitive to what it means to be vulnerable. That experience stays with you. I find myself being more patient and open with strangers at home just because I know what it's like to be the new person.
That's so beautifully put, Amir. And it's true. You come home with this deeper compassion. I love that. And speaking of empathy, I think solo travel also forces you to listen more to yourself, to others, to the world around you. You notice the rhythms of a place, the way people greet each other in the mornings, the way the city wakes up, the little rituals you'd miss if you were rushing along with a group.
Yes. And when you're alone, you can set your own pace. You can linger in a museum for hours if you want, or just sit in a park and watch the world go by. There's no need to negotiate or compromise. You really get to follow your own curiosity.
That's actually one of my favorite things, waking up and thinking, what do I want to do today? No one else's agenda, no timetable except the one I create. It's so freeing. Sometimes I'll just walk in a random direction and see where I end up. I've stumbled into the best bookstores, little neighborhood bakeries, even street festivals that way.
That's the magic of the wandering spirit. Actually, one of my favorite solo travel memories is from Kyoto. I'd planned to visit a famous temple, but on the way I got distracted by a tiny garden tucked between two buildings. It wasn't on any map, but there was this old man tending the plants and he invited me in. We didn't share a language, but we shared tea and sat in silence for a while. It was one of the most peaceful afternoons I've ever had.
That's incredible. Those spontaneous moments are everything, and you're right. They almost never happen when you're moving in a group or when you're sticking rigidly to a plan.
Exactly. It's like solo travel gives you permission to slow down, to get lost, to stumble into the unexpected.
And to be okay with not always knowing what's next. I think that's a big lesson too, getting comfortable with uncertainty. I used to be such a planner, but traveling solo has made me more adaptable, more open to change.
Same. I used to have these color-coded itineraries, but now I leave lots of space for the unplanned. Sometimes the best days are the ones with no agenda at all.
Totally. And I think that skill, being adaptable, staying calm when things don't go as planned, is something you carry with you in all areas of life. Like if you can handle missing a train in a foreign country and figure out a solution, you can handle a lot of curveballs back home too.
Absolutely. It builds a quiet kind of confidence. I think another thing people worry about is feeling unsafe or out of their depth. But honestly, most places aren't as scary as you might think. Most people are good, and you learn to trust your instincts. If something doesn't feel right, you move on. If someone seems trustworthy, you can open up a little.
That's so true. And it's not about being fearless. It's about being aware, being prepared, and also giving yourself grace if you need a break. There were days in Lisbon when I just stayed in my hostel and read, or treated myself to a long lunch because I was tired. And that's okay too.
Definitely. Solo travel doesn't mean you have to be out there adventuring every second. It's about giving yourself permission to rest, to reflect, to do what feels right for you in the moment.
I think that's one of the gifts of solo travel. You learn to listen to your own needs and you realize it's okay to honor them. You don't have to keep up with anyone else.
That's a lesson a lot of us need, honestly. Sometimes we get so caught up in expectations, what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to travel or live. Solo travel lets you reconnect with your own rhythms.
I love that. And, we've talked a lot about the emotional and psychological benefits, but I also think solo travel is just fun. There's something so exhilarating about being a little bit lost, about figuring things out on your own. It feels like a game sometimes.
Yes, there's a thrill to it. Like even something as simple as ordering food in a language you barely speak becomes an adventure. And you get to celebrate the little victories, finding your way, making a new friend, discovering a hidden gem.
I remember one night in Lisbon, I decided to go to a fado music bar, completely on my own. I was nervous, but it ended up being this magical night. I shared a table with a family from Porto, and even though my Portuguese was terrible, we laughed and sang and ended up exchanging emails. I never would have had that experience if I hadn't been willing to go out alone.
That's such a great example. And honestly, some of my best memories are from nights when I pushed myself just a little out of my comfort zone. It's not about being reckless, but about saying yes to new experiences, even if they feel a bit scary at first.
Exactly. And I think solo travel reminds you that you're capable of more than you think. You don't have to wait for someone else to join you to have incredible experiences.
Yes. And to anyone listening who's thinking, I don't have anyone to go with, that's the whole point. Go anyway. You'll meet people along the way, but more importantly, you'll meet yourself.
I couldn't have said it better. And, I think we should talk a little about the practicalities too. Like, what are some little tips or hacks for first time solo travelers?
That's a great idea. Okay, here are a few that have helped me. First, pack light. Seriously, you don't need as much as you think. It's easier to move around, and you feel less weighed down. Second, always have a backup plan. Keep digital and paper copies of important documents. And third, trust your gut. If a situation feels off, don't worry about being polite. Just remove yourself.
Those are gold, I'd add. Learn a few phrases in the local language, even if it's just hello, please, and thank you. People really appreciate it, and it goes a long way. Also, don't be afraid to eat alone. Bring a book or a journal if it helps you feel comfortable. But honestly, after a few meals, you'll realize no one cares, and you might even start to enjoy it.
Absolutely. And one thing I always do is start my trip with a walking tour. It's a great way to learn about the city, meet other travelers, and get your bearings. Plus, the guides often have the best local recommendations.
That's such a good one. And for anyone worried about feeling homesick, try to build little rituals into your days. Maybe it's a morning coffee in a cafe or an evening walk. Those small routines can make a new place feel more familiar.
I love that. And stay in touch with people back home, but don't be afraid to unplug too. Sometimes the best moments happen when you're not constantly checking your phone or social media.
Yes, let yourself be present. Take photos, of course, but also just soak it in. Some memories are better when they live only in your mind.
So true. And remember, it's okay to feel nervous or even lonely at times. That's part of the journey. Those feelings will pass, and you'll come out the other side stronger and more self-assured.
Absolutely. And if you ever need encouragement, there are so many travel communities online. Reach out, ask questions, share your fears. Chances are someone else has been there too.
That's one of my favorite things about the travel world. People are so generous with advice and support. You're never really alone, even when you're traveling solo.
I love that. Well, Amir, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I hope anyone listening feels inspired to take even a small solo adventure, whether it's halfway around the world or just in your own city.
Me too, Zoe. The world is so big and beautiful, and there's so much to discover, not just out there, but within ourselves. Solo travel is one of the best gifts you can give yourself.
So true. And just before we say goodbye, we want to remind you if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and maybe share it with someone who needs a little nudge to book that solo trip. Your support helps us keep these conversations going, and it means so much to us.
Thank you all for joining us today on Humaning. We're so grateful for this community, and we love hearing your stories and thoughts. If you have a solo travel story or a question, leave us a comment. We'd love to connect.
Take care, everyone. Remember, the world is waiting for you, and so are you. Until next time, happy travels and keep humaning.
Goodbye, friends. Safe journeys wherever you go. See you next time.